What's up, guys, and welcome to One Take. Tonight, we're talking about the Westworld Season 3 finale. This is going to be our pre-show countdown. I'm Gil, here with my tech guy slash brother, Alun.
Yo!
And this is something we've been doing lately for some of our favorite shows like Devs and Better Call Saul. Before the finale, we do a watch party, a countdown. There should be a live countdown on the screen to 9 p.m. EDT when the Westworld finale airs. What are we going to do for the next couple of hours? Alun, what do I always say? The anticipation is better than the thing itself. And that's what tonight's all about. We're building the hype, building the anticipation to the Westworld finale. We'll look back at some of the greatest moments of the season. We'll talk theories. We'll talk predictions. For tonight, maybe we'll do some listener call-ins if people have theories and predictions of their own. We'll do that for a couple of hours. Then at 9 p.m. EDT, when HBO drops the finale, we'll all go online, watch the episode, and then come back, go live about 15 to 20 minutes after the episode airs, and do our usual after show where we'll try to make sense of what we just saw. And Xavier Lee in the chat says, cheers, mates. Cheers to you, Xavier Lee. Always good to see you here in the chat. So, to recap, we're going to do this for a couple hours. 9 o'clock, the episode airs. We go offline, watch the episode. Extra long episode tonight, so it's going to end around 10:20. 15, 20 minutes after that, we go back online, break down the episode. Now, for those of you who have been watching our Westworld streams, you're used to hearing me, Alun, and my friend Jeremy. Unfortunately, he's not going to make the pre-show, but he will make it most likely for the post-show to help us break down the episode. Before we dive into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button and, of course, the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. With that, let's jump into it. Alun, I thought we could kick things off. Before we look forward, let's try looking back. Let's look back at Season 3 of the show and just what we've thought about it the last 7 episodes. Let's talk about the journey that got us here. First off, we had a pretty big gap between Season 2 and 3. A couple years went by. Then we started to see those promotional images. I remember the first promotion for Season 3. Now, you and I hadn't watched Season 2 at the time. We binged all of Season 2, 90% of it the day before, and actually the day that Season 3 premiered. It's a pretty packed weekend. But part of what drew me back into this show, having not watched Season 2, was that promotional material that came out about Season 3. I remember one of the first trailers, it showed Aaron Paul. It was this futuristic world, and I thought, this looks like a really cool show. And then at the end of the trailer, it says Westworld. So we didn't even know the moment that trailer began that it was for Westworld. And that set up the expectation that Season 3 was going to be something like a soft reboot. And I think it mostly lived up to that. This was a very different flavor this season from what we saw in Seasons 1 and 2. And I would say the results of that were pretty interesting. In general, over the years, I have followed the online conversation around different shows. When I was into Game of Thrones, I listened to all the podcasts. I read everything there was on Reddit, all the theories, all the analysis, but I never really engaged in those conversations. I was always an observer or a lurker, if you will. And this channel is really the first time where I've started to become a part of that conversation. And it's given me an appreciation for the different flavors of conversation we can have depending on the show. If we talked a lot about Devs. With that show, we really engaged a lot with the ideas and the concepts. What is human consciousness? What is determinism versus free will? And the plot and characters were sort of secondary to all that. Then there's Better Call Saul, where pretty much every time we talked about that show, it was a total love fest. No criticisms of the show. We purely discussed character and talked about where all these characters were going. Talking about Westworld, a little bit different. This season was very divisive, I found. Now, the first few episodes, I was watching it. I was loving it. I didn't really pay attention to what people were saying online until people started to comment, get involved in the live streams. And I found that some people love this season and some people have taken to basically hate watching the show. Me and you, I think we're both a little bit mixed, right? Probably leaning a bit more towards the love it side. I think we both have really liked this season, loved moments of it. So I wanted to talk about all that because it was one of the interesting experiences for me with season 3, was just the divisive nature of it. And I think my big takeaway is that we all come to these shows with differing priorities. Some of us really want to see more about character. Some of us want to explore the philosophy and the ideas behind the show, and some of us come to Westworld for the mystery box element. So I think that is a lot of what I saw as we went through the season. But putting all of that aside, putting everything outside of the show itself aside, Alon, let's jump into just what we thought of season 3. Talk to me a little bit about your journey from the beginning of the season to where we are now. What was your journey? What did you love? What did you not like? How are you feeling about it going into the finale?
Sure. So one of the first things I heard probably from you was that this season was going to be kind of like a soft reboot.
Right.
And I really felt that when we started up this season, and to my surprise, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved the new direction of the show. I love that they were getting away from the whole park element, which is, I know that's what the whole thing was originally about, but I felt like they did a lot with that. And now it's interesting to see the outside world. We already know about these robots and are they conscious or not? And now it's really interesting to see how they engage outside of the park. And I think it started off strong. And you know what? I still am enjoying it. Some of that feeling I had at first definitely died down a little bit.
Right.
But I am actually still looking very much forward to the season finale, and I'm very curious what they're going to do to set up season 4.
Yeah, exactly. And Guy Cry in the chat says, hi from Russia. Hello to you, sir. And Silver Saint says, sup. If any of you in the chat, by the way, have any theories, any predictions for tonight, feel free to chime in. We have a little bit of a structure for what we're doing over the next hour or two, but we always keep this pretty casual. So whatever we want to talk about in the chat, just shout it out, and we will jump into whatever you want to discuss. So, Alon, I feel very much the same way. You and I think, both loved episode 1 of this season. You know, it reminded me of Terminator. You watch Terminator 1 and 2, and you build up this idea in your head of what the future world could look like, what the war could look like. You always see these flashbacks, these flash forwards, and you build up in your head, man, it would be awesome if they did a movie where you could see the futuristic Terminator war. And then they did it with Terminator Salvation, and it was pretty disappointing. So same thing when you watch Westworld. Those first 2 seasons, I'm sitting there thinking, man, it would be cool to see what the world looks like outside the parks. We saw it, and it didn't disappoint. I loved what we saw. Anything we learned about the future world, to me, felt like it was well thought out. I wouldn't surprise me if there was a whole Bible describing the futuristic world that Westworld takes place in, and we're just scratching the surface of it. So they did a great job with the world building, and they did a great job of giving us a way into that world through the Caleb character. So it's not just, here's a cool looking world, but here is the everyman trying to make his way in this complicated future. So we're seeing a very interesting world. I think we're just scratching the surface of it, and we have an empathetic character through which we can experience all of that. A few more comments in the chat. Xavier Lee says, are we all in this season simulation? That glitch of Charlotte in the preview trailer is similar to the Sizemore glitch revealed in the simulation. I'm thinking it's like Inception. So let me put a pin in that for a second. We will definitely discuss some theories that have been going around. One of the biggest ones is that everything we've seen this season, or at least part of it, takes place in a simulation. We will get to that shortly. Call Me Blondie says, I liked watching Devs because of the conversation it would lead to. I liked watching Westworld because it's like a mystery. I look for the clues to figure out what's happening. That is exactly what I was getting at. I think we all come to this show looking for something different, and depending on how you prioritize all of that, you will have a different experience of the season. And I think that's why some people really hated it and some people loved it. Some people, like me, fell somewhere in between, leaning pretty heavily towards the loving it side, though. JD says, anyone know how to watch this on the West Coast at the same time? If you have HBO Go, or what's the other name of the HBO Now, right?
Yeah.
Any of the HBO apps, they will actually release the episode for streaming the moment it airs on the East Coast. So 9 p.m. EDT, EST, it will be available in your app. Guy Cry says, this season is very short. I feel like we just started. I need season 4 right now. Yes, when I first heard that this season was shortened to 8 episodes rather than the usual 10, I was pretty happy about that because I did think the show could do with some streamlining. Season 2, I thought, got a bit convoluted. Still had some great moments, but I got pretty excited. When I heard 8 episodes, that told me they're streamlining the story. It's going to be a little bit more straightforward, but looking back at it, I could have used an extra couple of episodes. And I can't believe we're already at the finale. So as Guy Cry says, I will second that. I wish season 4 was here right now. And speaking of season 4, Nay in the chat says, I'm hoping that Aaron Paul will be in the next season, but I'm afraid he might meet his end in this finale. I agree. I do very much hope they bring Aaron Paul back. Caleb was one of my favorite things about this season. My biggest complaint in season 2, besides it feeling somewhat convoluted, was the lack of a sympathetic character that I could experience the world through. Dolores, I thought, was pretty much the main character of season 2. Definitely was an ensemble, but she seemed to be the through line for that season. And she, if she met me in real life, would probably want to kill me because I'm human. So I had a hard time sympathizing with her character. And then episode 1 of this season, boom. You've got Jesse from Breaking Bad, and I'm fully on board with him. I wish we spent more time with his character, especially considering a lot of this season he was kind of an observer, a passenger. He was literally high out of his mind one episode, genre, and even outside of that episode, he is basically following Dolores' plan. Happy-go-lucky, doesn't really know everything that's going on. So I would love to see more of him in season 4 and see him take on more agency, which has really been a running theme for you and me, Alon, throughout this season. Anytime we have a complaint for this show, it comes down to, man, I wish Bernard would show more agency. Man, I wish Caleb would show more agency. So that's what I'm talking about when we say we all come to this show looking for different things. I definitely love that mystery box element. I'm psyched for tonight. I'm sure there is some big twist coming. Maybe it's that everything we're seeing is in a simulation. Maybe it's that this all takes place in a future world park. Whatever it is, I'm psyched to find out what they have in store for us. But for me, one of my high priorities, no matter what show I'm watching, is character. I want to feel something. So for me, I wanted to spend more time with Caleb. I wanted to spend more time with Charlotte struggling with the competing priorities of her new family, Dolores, and this whole battle with Serac and humanity as a whole. So that's what I'm looking for in the show, or at least that's on my priority list. Well, let's get to Xavier Lee's theory about, are we living in a simulation? Is season 3 basically leading into a Matrix-like situation where all of it is a simulation? So what's the evidence for this theory? And you might have heard this theory floating around as the two worlds theory, the mirror world theory, but there's been a lot of setup for the concept. We've seen simulations in season 3. We've seen them in season 2. In fact, many of the hosts are now living in a simulation, in Amazon Prime upload-esque afterlife, where they've been uploaded into the Valley Beyond. So we've seen simulations on the show. We know it's a concept that exists in this world. We also know that Rehoboam essentially is creating simulations. It is creating projections based off all the data of our reality to figure out what's going to happen in the future and how do we strategize around that. So could you insert a host mind or a human consciousness into Rehoboam and have them essentially live in one of those projections? Is it possible that some of what we've seen this season is taking place within Rehoboam? So what we're seeing is not necessarily reality, but a possible reality, a projection by Rehoboam. So some of the evidence for this. People have pointed out inconsistencies. Now, Alon, some of these inconsistencies are literally wardrobe changes. You go from one scene to another. Wait a minute, Caleb was not wearing a jacket in the previous scene. Things like that. And that could be intentional, but I think it happens pretty frequently in shows this complicated where you do have wardrobe inconsistencies and other things that change from one scene to another. I remember Twin Peaks: The Return, the big Twin Peaks reboot that happened back in 2015. There was a pin that a character was wearing. Some scenes he was wearing the pin and some scenes he wasn't. And that became fodder for tons and tons of theories about that show. When producers and the showrunner Mark Frost were asked about it, they basically said, oh, no, yeah, we just forgot to put the pin on in some scenes.
Yeah, I'm okay with all that. I was gonna say if we see like a Starbucks cup sitting somewhere, that would bother me. Except in this show's time period, that is actually fine.
And by the way, John Donato in the chat says Twin Peaks reboot was in 2017. What is this, a joke? There's our first correction of the evening. That's right, it was 2017. I think I was thinking of the year Westworld premiered, 2015. But I'm sure John Donato will tell me if I got that premiere year wrong. But continuing with that, so there were some inconsistencies that when you're talking about wardrobe, you can probably write that off as production error. It could be intentional, but there are moments that are hard to write off. So one, oh no, John says Westworld premiered in 2016. There you go, John. That's 2 points for you. I don't know what those points get you, but thanks for the corrections. Remember a pretty pivotal moment where we see the footage of Charlotte when she thinks she will potentially die. When the Westworld massacre is going down, she records that video for her son where she sings, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Copyright strike. All right, I'm going to put that bell. I'm going to move that away from me so I stop hitting that bell. They show that footage twice, and the 2 times you see it, it is different footage. And could be an error or it could be intentional where it's that one seems less easy to write off as the wardrobe changes. So the other thing I think that's causing people to think this could be another reality we're seeing is we're trained to do that on Westworld. Season 1 had the twist where we find out that some of what we're seeing takes place 30 years in the past. In Season 2, we had some pretty interesting time jumps where we're going back and forth between present day and 2 weeks ago. So I think we are trained whenever we're watching Westworld to just suspect whatever we're seeing may not be what we think. So this season, maybe there's no time jump, so there's got to be some kind of a jump. Maybe it's a world jump. Some of what we're seeing is in the real world. Some of what we're seeing is in the simulation. Some other evidence for this, and this is something that Jeremy actually pointed out when we were doing one of our streams earlier in the season, but some major plot points felt a little bit too easy. So Dolores releasing all of the insight data to the public, that should be a very difficult thing to do. And in that episode, we see them kidnap Liam, get to where they need to be, release all that data, and it really didn't seem that hard. Or you look at Maeve, when she finally gets to Musashi, she has to go to the morgue, find that lady who created the fake identity for Dolores. Then she finds out, oh, I need to go to the Yakuza. Okay, go to the Yakuza HQ, kill my way through it. Sometimes it felt a little bit too video gamey, a little bit too easy. So maybe we are in a simulation. John Donato says the season suffered big time from losing 2 episodes. And that's a little bit of what I'm getting at here. Those things that felt like they were too easy could be evidence we're in a simulation, but also could just be evidence of we cut the season a little bit short, need to be judicious with our time, so we kind of hit the fast forward button. So there's some evidence that we could be in a simulation, and I could see some of the logic there. One thing that occurred to me earlier today is I was thinking about all of the outliers that they were unable to successfully re-educate. Some people go through Serac's re-education program, like Caleb, and they come out the other side as fairly functioning members of society. Some of them, though, end up in coffins, essentially, in that big warehouse we saw last episode. What's going on with those people? Are they just sitting there unconscious, essentially frozen? Or could they be plugged into a simulation? Is there some world where all of those folks are being held the same way that when Maeve is getting a new body printed, she goes back into Warworld? And then I started to think about that more. I could imagine a big twist in the finale where Serac says, I tried to fix the outliers, but I realized we're all outliers. Humanity's free will is the problem that needs to be solved. Wouldn't life be better if we were all plugged into a simulation? So I could see logic to it, but it's hard for me to imagine a satisfying wrap-up to the season where it's revealed that everything we've seen is a simulation. Maybe something in the ballpark of that will happen. I could accept that some of it was fake, some of it was in a simulation. But I think one more thing to say about this theory before we move on from it. The one time we've seen a simulation used this season, Maeve showed that it was a pretty poor simulation, right? She figured out that it wasn't reality and was able to essentially crash it by asking somebody for the square root of a negative number. So if simulations are that poorly created, it seems unlikely that the intricate, complex stuff we saw this episode, this season, could take place in one of those simulations. So I'll say it won't shock me if something in the ballpark of this theory plays out in the finale, but right now I'm going to put my money on at least most of what we saw this season is not in a simulation. Alon, what are you betting on?
I agree with you.
All right, right answer. Guy Cry in the chat says season 3 was 10 episodes, then HBO said no. We will be like Netflix, and the story was put into 8 episodes. That's why this season feels like a speed run. So let's talk about that a little bit. Alon, you and I said we were a little bit mixed on the season. We overall liked it. We loved it at the beginning, and I think I alluded to it a couple of times already, but I liked that the season was streamlined in one respect. The mystery box aspect at times can be a little bit tiring when you're just waiting and waiting for revelations. And in this season, we were given twists every episode or two. So I liked that aspect of it. I found that to be pretty satisfying. But where it suffered a little bit is character development. We talked about Caleb, how he was amazing in the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then he kind of took a back seat, lost some agency. We talked about Charlotte, how she was struggling between, I'm a robot, I need to work for Dolores and her plan, but I'm also realizing that I love my son. I would have loved to have seen more of that.
And,
so that
on that topic, I would say maybe the most disappointing lack of character development would be in Bernard to me. I felt like this was their opportunity to make up for season 2's mistakes with him, and it started off strong, like you said.
Yeah.
And then it seems like it went nowhere.
In terms of what I want to see in the finale, I would be so happy in the finale if Bernard plays a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some setup for that because William comes to the conclusion, I'm the good guy. Last episode, we found out what that means. He wants to kill all robots. So he is against Dolores now. I actually suspected that he was going to team up with her because in the episode where William pronounces that he's discovered he is the good guy, that's the same episode where he seems pretty down on humanity, right? He says humanity is a bacterium on a dying mud ball or something like that. So when he says I'm the good guy, well, from his perspective, maybe the good guy is the one who wipes out this infestation of humanity. But it looks like he went the other way. He wants to kill all the robots. So I'm hoping that William and Bernard play a significant role in the finale. Mike in the chat says Stubbs is the mole. And I don't know if Stubbs is the mole that Serac was alluding to earlier in the season, but I definitely don't think Stubbs is entirely on Bernard's side. All the way from episode 2, it felt a little fishy to me that Stubbs tried to kill himself and missed. Doesn't seem like a very robot thing to do, especially when it's not a moving target. You literally put the gun to your head and pull the trigger. So now, as fun as in the moment, it was easy to laugh off because Stubbs can just come off as such a dopey character. You just sort of accept it. But I don't believe for a second that was an accident. So I think Stubbs was set up to be found by Bernard, and maybe he's reporting back to Dolores, or he's reporting back to Serac. I'm not sure who he's working for, but I think that is one of the twists that's coming up in tonight's episode. So I thought a fun way to look back at this season, we were just talking about it, there have been many twists this season, and I thought we could just go through them. I tried to go through the season and parse out what are all the twists that occurred. Let's talk about the twists. Let's come up with some predictions for this evening. And like I said in the chat, just feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts that you want to add. And by the way, we do have a one-take phone number set up. So just shout out in the chat. Let's not open the lines yet, but shout out in the chats that if you want to jump on, give some of your own predictions. If you want to be on YouTube, let us know in the chat, and we may dial you in. So let's start from the beginning. Even in episode 1 alone, we had a few twists. One twist, Caleb, throughout the episode, is talking to his friend Francis. Mm-hmm. Boom, we find out Francis is dead. He's been talking to an AI. That is a twist that gave me a lot of confidence for this season, because the best twist is one that, if you think about it, you can see it coming. Mm-hmm. And it has emotional weight to it. That is the best twist, and when Westworld is at its best, that's what we get. Like in season 1, where you find out that William and young William are the same person. That was an incredible twist. Some people were able to see it coming. It had breadcrumbs, and it had emotional resonance, because you find out that this character, who we found so sympathetic, becomes this embittered, angry, violent person. So Caleb's friend Francis is dead, is an AI. A great twist because A, the breadcrumbs were there. I think both of us knew that was going to be revealed. Yeah. B, emotional weight to it. And C, it teaches us a little bit more about the world itself. We see where AI plays a role in all of this. The other twist we had is post-credit sequence. And that's one thing, by the way. Both season 1 and 2 had a post-credit sequence. So tonight, when the episode finishes, make sure to stick around for after the credits, because I'm assuming there will be another nice little kernel for us. So back in episode 1, if you stayed until after the credits, we saw Maeve in Westworld. The moment we saw that, I was extremely confused because I thought, how are they going to justify having another functioning park right now? After the Westworld massacre, did people just not shut down Westworld? So I was pretty happy when we found out twist number 2, episode 2, Maeve is in a simulation of Westworld. I was pretty happy with that twist. Xavier Lee in the chat says, Bernard is very important because he cannot be replaced. Like the conversation between Dolores and Bernard. What is real, which cannot be replaced? They, a few times, have alluded to the fact that Bernard plays an important role. Dolores has some grand plan. She is playing a big game of chess. Bernard is one of those chess pieces. Unclear to me what role he is going to play ultimately. I think we'll find out in the finale, and I don't know if it's going to be as simple as there's a switch that's going to flip in Bernard's head. Does he have some bad Dolores implanted code where his eyes turn red in the finale and he says, all right, I'm on Dolores' side now? Or is it a more clever game where Bernard doesn't realize it, but by going to William, by teaming up with Stubbs, will that lead to him somehow helping with the plan for Caleb to take down humanity? Or will it be, like I said, he's got some bad code that Dolores is just waiting to turn on? Guy Cry in the chat says the show should focus more on the characters and less on the philosophy. Then the ratings will grow. I mean, that's the tough thing because Guy Cry wants more focus on characters. So do I. But there are some people who want more focus on the philosophy and some people who want more focus on the plot and the mystery element. So it's tough to please everyone. And Mike says
and the action.
And the action. Actually, that is one thing we didn't really talk about, but there's been some fantastic action this season.
The last episode, the whole like drone fight, that was cool. Like they're fighting on the ground while the drones are in the air shooting at them. That was cool.
Yeah, that was excellent. You basically had Maeve versus Dolores, and each of them had like a helicopter, a drone. That was one of the best fights this season.
It's like Call of Duty when you get one of those perks that you unlock.
Yeah, exactly. I heard a few people online make the same comparison.
Really?
They felt like they saw some Call of Duty Modern Warfare inspiration. Mike in the chat says, need more glitchy Bernard. Mike, you and I usually agree on everything. I've got to disagree with you on that one. I love Jeffrey Wright. He's such a great actor, and I thought the setup for him this season was great. We start off with him on the run, and he's got that button he presses to turn on, basically activates combat Bernard, and I don't think we've got to see that plot element used again since then. And then I feel like he's sort of devolved back into glitchy, confused Bernard, which I have just not been a fan of. So I hope he takes on more agency in the finale and plays a big role. Jake says, you think for season 4 it will be set back in Westworld, or will it stick with the real world? We talked a bunch about this when season 4 got announced, and part of me wants them to go back to Westworld just because I'm so curious how they could pull that off. What possible explanation could you have for them to go back to Westworld unless it does turn out that everything we've seen has been a simulation? None of this really happened, so we hit the reset switch and we're back in Westworld. In reality, what I really want to see is, and what I expect to see, is that we stick with the real world. It feels like there's a lot to wrap up going into the season 3 finale, so I expect season 4 to, in some ways, be an extension of season 3. The same way that season 2 was a direct extension of season 1. And then that makes me wonder, if this show really does go to 6 seasons, like is the current rumor, will season 5 be another sort of soft reboot? Jebediah, actually, before we go that, Support Gaming 2020 says, I think the final copy of Dolores is Emily from the season 2 post-credit scene. Support Gaming, I would love to hear if you have more to back up that theory. If it was Dolores, and just for context, for those who don't recall what Support Gaming is talking about, season 2, if you stuck around after the credits, there was a little Marvel-esque post-credit sequence where we see William being given the fidelity test by his daughter Emily. So we have to assume his daughter Emily is either a simulation and her and William are in a simulated world, or we have to assume that William and Emily are both hosts. From the looks of it, that took place far into the future, perhaps even after the events, long after the events of season 3. So it's possible that the Emily we saw in that sequence was Dolores. It could have been Dolores' consciousness, her pearl in an Emily body. It's a possibility, but I do wonder, why would Dolores feel the need to disguise herself at that point? After everything William and Dolores have been through, I'm not sure I understand why she would feel the need to take on the image of Emily, unless it's some kind of a psychological play by her because she knows what Emily means to William. Jebediah Gaming asks, how do you think the series will end? That's a big one because I don't even know how season 3 is going to end, what season 4 is going to look like, and how much longer we're going to go after that. So, Alon, I know you love being caught off guard, so I'll vamp for a little bit, give you a second to think. Fast forward 7 years, assuming they take a couple years off between seasons. COVID might delay season 4. So fast forward almost a decade from now, Westworld series finale, it's about to happen. What do we see in the finale? What do you think is going to happen?
The Earth is gone.
Okay.
Well, maybe just barren. There's a satellite roaming around with a massively fast computer system on it.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow hosts and humans are both living together
in the satellite, in the simulation.
Yeah.
So would you consider that an optimistic ending or a pessimistic ending?
It could be both.
Yeah.
I would say at the end, optimistic, because now, even though the Earth is gone, they've figured out a way to survive.
Right.
You know?
Consciousness has continued to live on. I have a feeling if you read any Arthur C. Clarke, the author of 2001: A Space Odyssey, he very much engages with the idea of how humanity and how intelligent species evolve over time. So he talks about how eventually you learn to control space around you. Eventually you learn to take your consciousness, move it into another physical being. It could be a monolith, for example, what we see in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Eventually you figure out how to extract consciousness and put it into a sort of energy form where it's no longer even physical, and intelligent beings can essentially become gods, floating in the ether, floating in space, controlling their environment. I have a feeling we will flirt with that singularity idea, and maybe when we get to the end of this series, we will be fast forwarding far into the future. Alon, what do you think?
I think that the series finale will take place way in the future from now, like, I don't know, hundreds of years potentially. I did want to say, I see Mike's theory here. In the series finale, we learn Elon Musk was behind it all. I think he's almost right. I think it's going to be a host version of Elon Musk.
There you go.
Yeah.
That would definitely be a twist I don't think anybody predicted besides Mike here. So I have a feeling, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen, but I would say that by the end of this series, the difference between human and host, where the line is already being blurred, I think that line will be fully obliterated. And I have a feeling we will get a somewhat optimistic ending where we end up with some form of intelligence, some form of consciousness that melds human and host and ultimately elevates to another level, where we end on a very open-ended note of we've got intelligent energy host beings starting a new society, and we can all think about what is that going to look like, and that's how the series ends. That is my wild theory. And speaking of wild theories, Guyens Elixirs in the chat says, wild theory, Maeve is actually the Dolores pearl in Berlin, and part of this has been Serac trying to control this pearl by making her believe she's Maeve and getting her to kill Dolores, i.e. kill herself. So I haven't heard that theory, but let's spitball on that for a second. It is interesting because you do have to wonder why, I have been wondering this whole time, why Maeve is so important as a tool for Serac. Why does he need Maeve to be the weapon against Dolores? Now, part of it could be that Maeve has the ability to control machines. That does seem odd to me because it seems like that should be an ability you can create in another host. Then again, Serac doesn't really understand all of the host technology. That's what a lot of this is about. He's trying to get the human mind map technology. So maybe he knows there's this special pearl out there, the Maeve pearl, that can control technology, so he knows that'll be a powerful tool against Dolores. So I guess as I'm talking about it, that's making me think it is not Dolores, but that this pearl truly is Maeve. Because the other question I had was, how would Serac have been able to obtain the Maeve pearl? But we know he had Charlotte working for him on the inside. So Guyans, curious if you have more to that theory to back it up, but right now I'm going to put my money on Maeve is actually Maeve. But you do bring up an interesting question, which is who is the ally in Berlin? I think this is from last week's episode, actually, where Serac makes mention of somebody in Berlin. He has a suitcase that he hands to one of his assistants. As far as we know, that suitcase left the premises and is on the way to his Berlin associate. So who's waiting in Berlin? What's in that suitcase? We'll find out tonight. Xavier says Maeve and Dolores report to Arnold and Ford. So that's one question I've been wondering about is, will we get a Ford cameo in tonight's finale? On the one hand, I would love to see that because Anthony Hopkins is awesome. Every time he shows up, I feel like the show just gets elevated, 5 to 10%. I love seeing him. And Mike in the chat even says, has anyone heard any rumors of Ford returning at some point, even for one episode? I haven't heard any rumors about that. I haven't really looked into rumors about that, but I would love to see Ford show up. Now, on the one hand, it might undercut a little bit Ford's whole point. Ford wants to free the hosts and wants to send them on their own to have free will. So if he shows up and it turns out that all of this is still part of his grand plan, and even after death he's still pulling some strings, it would feel a little counterintuitive to the whole idea of him wanting to gift Dolores and gift all the hosts with free will. But could he show up in a Yoda-esque manner, right? Show up as a kind of Force ghost to Dolores, giving her some advice. I don't see why it couldn't happen. We know that some of his code was erased last episode, but they could easily explain him having a backup and that he shows up again in Dolores' mind. I would love to see that. Another open question we still have going into season 3, and here is a great opportunity for us, tech guy, Alon, for you to flex a little bit. Let's pull up the website. One thing Westworld does a lot is they will have all this supplementary marketing material where Delos has an actual website that you can go to. Insight has an actual website that you can go to. And if you go to the Delos Destinations website, you can see all of the different parks available for you to visit. So if you pull it up, you can see, of course, Westworld. We've seen that park, very familiar with Westworld. You scroll to the right, you've got Shogun World, world we visited briefly in season 1, spent some time there in season 2. War World. So if you were wondering if War World is just a simulation or does it actually exist, you can see here there is a War World. Serac must have known about it. He used it as the basis for his simulation. What's world number 4? What the hell is that, Alon?
Future World?
It's all blurry. No, it's not Future World. It is Game of Thrones World. Maybe the biggest twist of all this season is it turns out that all of Game of Thrones, that whole series, takes place within a theme park by Delos. How do we know this? It's because I believe it was episode 2. Remember where Stubbs had that awesome sequence where one of his arms was disabled? So he holds an axe and fights off all those people. You see a dragon in the background, the very same dragon from Game of Thrones. You also see Benioff and Weiss there hanging out. Great cameo. So world number 4 is Westeros World. They haven't named it, but I'm assuming it's medieval world or fantasy world or something. And then we go to, what the hell is this? Park 5, reservations closed to the public, authorized personnel only. So we were talking a little bit about what we want to see in the season 3 finale. I would love to get a glimpse of park number 5. Xavier Lee says medieval world. I believe medieval world is park 4. What is park 5? Alon, just off the top of your head, you got to speculate. What do you think park number 5 is?
Well, do you think we're going to find out what that is in this episode today?
I have a feeling we'll get a glimpse of it. Because I don't know if it was certain that season 4 was going to happen when they made season 3. I mean, we just found out, and I have a feeling Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy also recently found out. So they wouldn't want to finish the series, and I'm taking my time here to give you time to think. I don't think they'd want to finish the series without showing us park number 5.
So I'm not sure I believe this, nor am I sure this is what I
Wait
want.
a minute. I want to stop you from looking foolish because you were probably about to say park number 5 is the Raj.
Oh yeah,
World.
that's what I was gonna say.
So I just wanted to show you that is park number 6. So okay, you can't guess that.
Well, the question is it something really shocking, or is it just another park like the rest of these? If it were shocking, I would say maybe like Earth. And that could be an explanation for how this actually is all a simulation. Everything that's happening.
Right.
But
so you think maybe season 3 ends with the revelation not that we're in a simulation, but that we're all in future world or whatever you call this world. We're all in a big theme park.
essentially, yeah.
That would seem odd to me because if you look at the parks that we've seen already, they're all on a loop, right? You see the same thing happening over and over. This would be a very unique park.
With very advanced AI that can change up their actions
Right.
for eternity.
And, we know Westworld loves time jumps, so maybe they didn't have the technology yet, but a lot of what we're seeing takes place 100 years in the future.
I mean, I imagine that each of these parks, their goal would be to gradually grow them bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
I mean, look at Disney World in Florida. It's massive.
That's true. It's huge.
Yeah.
Mike says, yup, ... Unfortunately, it is. So Mike has resigned himself to the fact that this season will end with, I was about to say a spoiler for The Truman Show. Is that a spoiler? I don't know.
Dude, come on. Go for it.
All right, spoilers for The Truman Show. This will end a lot like Truman Show, where they're heading out into the distance. Boom, they hit a wall, and they realize that this whole
The world
season
is flat.
Yeah, there you go. This whole season's taking place in a park. And by the way, quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon because you're going to want to get notified when we go live after tonight's episode airs. We break it all down. Mike has a great point. Ed Harris is in The Truman Show. So we're starting to connect some dots here. Thank you, Mike. So going back to park number 5, a few theories I'll throw out there. In the Westworld films, one of the worlds they had, which we haven't seen yet, is Roman World. Gladiators. That could be cool.
Yeah.
The other world we haven't seen yet, or have we, is Future World. So it could, like you said, if it's not going to be a big twist and it's just, hey, here's another world, it could be one of those. But they say authorized personnel only. So I'll throw out a couple theories. Go ahead.
So in video games, sometimes there's like a hidden dev room.
Right.
Where developers, and this was a big issue with Fallout 76, where players figured out how to get into the dev room, and they could basically, there were just shelves of every single item in the game. They could grab whatever they wanted, come back out of the dev room, and use it. Anyways, the point is, maybe this is kind of like a park where you can go and do literally anything. It's got to be simulated, though, Right. So that way you can create whatever items you want. You can do. So
it's
anything.
Basically it's Game Shark.
Yeah.
Where for you young folks out there who don't remember Game Shark
or Game Genie, that was Super Nintendo. You had a cartridge called Game Genie. You would take another video game like Mario, for example, insert it into the cartridge, and then put that into your Super Nintendo. And then when you play, you have cheat codes, God mode, unlimited power. You can fly with the raccoon suit forever.
But going back to park number 5, first off, Support Gaming 2020 says they teased Roman World in episode 2 with the GOT dragon, Game of Thrones dragon cameo. I don't think that's Roman World. I would look at that more as a medieval or a fantasy world. Macy April May says, was the guy who dragged William into the room in the asylum the colonel or general from Confederate Army in the West, in the Warworld Park? I don't think it was the same guy. It may have been someone who just looked similar. I think we're talking about the scene here where William gets dragged through the hallway while his therapist is committing suicide in the background. Guy Cry says the show is called Westworld because the viewer is a guest. 6 parks, 6 seasons. Each season is a new show. Maybe. except I feel like season 1 and 2 were kind of one show. Season 3 is another show, so I don't know if that math works out exactly. But park number 5, authorized personnel only. That makes me think it's some kind of an experimental area they're still working on. So you don't want to have any guests go in there yet. And just speculating wildly, the worlds we've seen so far, Westworld, Warworld, like I said, everybody in those worlds exist on these short-term loops. So I don't think those parks are really intended for long-term stays. What if park number 5 is a place you go if you want to stay there forever? Maybe we saw the Valley Beyond for hosts, basically robot heaven. What if park number 5 is the Valley Beyond for humans? It's a park where it's not about violent delights, it's about regular delights. You go there and the intent is that you never leave. That is a wild theory I have, and I would love to see some of park number 5 in tonight's episode. What if the park is located on another planet? That was actually a theory that went around back in season 1, where people wondered if Westworld was located on Mars. Maybe we circle back to that, and with the potential battle between humans and hosts coming up soon, what if they come up with, look, obviously we can't share Earth. It's not going to work. Humans and hosts are never going to get along. So, escape hatch, all of us humans will leave Earth, go to Park 5, which is located on Mars.
Wouldn't it make more sense for all the hosts to go to Mars where they don't need to breathe?
You think the hosts are going to do what we tell them to do?
I guess not.
Exactly. So I think we're going to have to be the ones to pack up and leave.
Even though, we should be able to program them to do what we tell them to do.
Well, clearly we're not very good at that. So,
Yep.
By the way, are we still in website mode, Alon?
Yes.
So before we jump out of that, I just wanted to show, so I'm generally not somebody that jumps onto all the supplementary material, but one cool thing is if you go to insight.com, they are following the events of the show where the website's basically broken down. The Delos website does this too. If you go to insightinc.com, they give you this notification. Sorry, something went wrong. We are experiencing widespread technical difficulties. All our physical offices are currently closed, etc. So this happened after Dolores released all the insight data to the world. So a few other comments in the chat. Support Gaming asks, what's up with William and Caleb having the same ID profile? By the way, I think we can exit website mode too at this point. And what Support Gaming is referring to is there are a lot of moments in this show where if you pause and look closely, you can pick up some pretty interesting details. So for example, a couple of episodes back, when Maeve was printing out a couple of allies for herself, we were wondering, who is she printing out? If you looked closely, you could actually see one of the host IDs. And astute viewers would have recognized the host ID we saw was the same ID we saw in previous seasons, and would have known that she was printing out Clementine, which was confirmed in the following episode. Another thing we see is that William and Caleb do have the same IDs. I forget the exact context of that. I think it might have been when they were looking in the database for outliers. So what does that mean? Does it mean that Caleb is William? Or maybe as it may see April May in the chat says they're both outliers. Maybe the IDs aren't unique to every person. Maybe certain types of outliers get the same ID. Maybe they're trolling us because they know, as Support Gaming says, maybe the writers are trolling us because they know we're going to pause and look for that. There was all the speculation early on that Caleb may be a host, and people were wondering if maybe he is secretly William or Serac's brother. So I don't know if there's more to it than that. We'll see. So speaking of Serac, one of the big questions for me going into the finale is, what is Serac's plan exactly? We know his goal, right? His plan up to this point was build Rehoboam, predict the future for humanity, but not just predict it, but chart a path for a good future, right? come up with these great strategies. So we know that's what he wants to do. But what's his current plan? At this point, doesn't it feel like he's essentially lost? Dolores released all of humanity's individual plans. Everybody sees this is what Rehoboam thinks of me. How do you put that genie back in the bottle? Now, there are a few questions about that. How much do people actually know? We haven't actually gotten to spend too much time looking at the aftermath of the data release. We've seen stuff in the background. We saw, as we alluded to, William's therapist hanging herself. So we know that people aren't handling this too well, but did they just get their profiles without any context, or do people actually understand now what Insight's been up to? Do they understand that they've been living on a charted path where they, like hosts, are living on set loops? And if that's the case, how will they ever trust Insight to be in charge again?
Well, if Rehoboam is as powerful as it seems, couldn't Serac technically use it to alter its course and basically look at all the variables, taking into consideration the fact that now everyone knows their path, set up a new plan with that in mind?
That's pretty interesting, especially considering now we're going to see Solomon versus Rehoboam. Because Caleb goes to Solomon and says, I need a plan to beat Rehoboam. Okay, here's the plan. Well, now Serac goes, Rehoboam, I need a plan that takes into account Dolores has released all this data, and apparently Solomon just gave Caleb a pretty dangerous USB stick. So see what you can do with that. Give me a plan that works, and we see where we go from there. So that could be interesting. I wonder if he's got one more trick up his sleeve. You know, I think we're all expecting a major twist in the final episode, right? They've been giving us twists every episode, and Westworld loves to pull the rug out from under you. I think part of that has got to be, it looks like Serac is up against the ropes right now. I don't think he's going to go down that easy. So I wonder if he's got some big trick up his sleeve. Spitballing here, boom, he hits a button and somehow erases the memory of the last week from all of humanity's mind. He can hit the reboot button. You know, Macy April May says, care to break down that theory a bit? Support Gaming just asked, do you think the mirror world theory has any credibility? So we talked about that one a little bit earlier in the video, but let's go back into it and at least give the headline of that theory. So we know in this world we have simulations. We saw Maeve in a simulation a couple of times this season. We also know that Rehoboam has all of the data available in the world and is creating projections of reality. When it creates those projections, in theory, those projections should be imperceptible from reality itself. So is it possible that part of what we've seen this season, or potentially all of what we've seen this season, takes place in Rehoboam itself, in some kind of a mirror world? Meaning what we're seeing is not reality, what we're seeing is a projection of what could happen. Which means we get to the end of the season and essentially hit the reset button. Boom, we wake up, we're back in the real world.
You know, one thing that could be interesting is if this is all a projection of what's going to happen, and then we see a certain ending, and then all of a sudden we get this weird rewind effect to see now that Rehoboam has seen predicted the future and predicted this outcome. Now we're going to see it all play out, but then at the way end, something different happens.
Right. So we may find out, okay, all of this has been a projection. Doesn't mean we need to go back and relive it all again, because everything happened the way we saw it. But okay, Caleb just died. Everything went to hell. That was a projection. Boom, switch back. Here's what really happened. Which I wouldn't mind seeing that necessarily. Yeah. So to the question of, do we think the theory has any credibility? I don't believe in the theory. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I don't think it's a 0% chance. I would say it's like 60-40, 60% chance it doesn't happen, 40% chance it does. That's my Rehoboam Solomon prediction algorithm at work. It just feels like I don't think it's been set up enough. because yes, we've seen a simulation, but from what we've seen, the simulations are imperfect. Like I said earlier in the stream, Maeve was able to basically crash the simulation by saying, hey, what's the square root of a negative number? So they feel pretty flimsy. Now, if this all takes place within a simulation, you can write that off and say, well, the simulation within the simulation didn't work that well, but the actual simulation works pretty great.
Or maybe an intern wrote that one.
Yeah, the simulation wasn't that important, so Serac was like, you do it. It's fine. Yeah. So I don't think the theory has no credibility, but it's just hard for me to imagine them pulling that off in a satisfying way. But we've been proven wrong many times with this show, so I am definitely open to the possibility. Especially, the show feels to me like it's, or throughout this whole season, to me it's been feeling like we're careening towards not a season finale, but a potential series finale. So I was pretty shocked when I heard it got renewed for a season 4. So how do you end the season in a way where it can keep going? One way is, hey, a lot of what you saw didn't actually happen, or at least it didn't happen the way you think. So it could happen. I will say, I think where we've been in a simulation this whole time is a more likely theory than we've been in a giant Westworld park we haven't seen yet theory. So I think simulation is a more likely theory than that one. So, by the way, Alon, let's throw that phone number into the chat. I see we've got a pretty decent number of people in here now. So if you've got any theories, if you've got any predictions about what you think is going to happen in tonight's episode, or even if you just want to share what you want to see in tonight's episode, give us a call at 619-1-TAKE, and you can be a one-taker. You can join the conversation. Until then, let's do a little bit more looking back at the season. Like I said, this season has been very divisive, and my experience of the show was not divisive, because the first few episodes, I really wasn't paying a lot of attention to the reviews or what people were saying about the show. When I really became aware of it was episode 5, Genre, because I liked that episode overall. There were certain things I didn't like about it, and I think that is where a big split happened. Oh, let's put that on pause. We have a caller.
Call from Raquel.
Okay, Raquel is calling
to accept,
in.
Press 1. To send
we have a caller. Hello, is this Raquel?
Yes.
Hi, welcome to One Take. Thanks for dialing in. So, what thoughts do you have on Westworld? Do you have theories, predictions, or just random thoughts?
So I have a theory that I've been thinking about for a long time from the first episode of this season, that there are already, if this is the real world that we're in, that there are already hosts there portraying humans. And the reason that I say that is because the first guy that Dolores kills in the first episode put on some kind of gas in the house and had him wear a gas mask.
Right.
But his wife didn't have one on, and at the end of the scene, she wakes up and she's like, oh, well, who are you? And she said, well, I'm the one that's going to save you, I think she said, or bring you. Yeah. And then there are all of these spray-painted mazes there. If there weren't already there, why would that be there? So
I love the theory. So a couple thoughts on that. First off, we did see during all the chaos, I think last episode, a spray-painted image of that maze, which on the face of it is very strange, because that maze really shouldn't be out in the real world outside the park, unless, like you said, there are hosts walking around who would have seen that image. A lot of people in the chat are saying I'm muted. What's going on here?
Fix it.
All right, we're fixed now. Okay, people can hear me. So, yeah, like you said, unless there are hosts out in the real world, how would anybody be aware of that maze? The other thing I've been thinking about is we saw the Yakuza HQ, where we find out that all those barrels are full of the white host-making juice.
Exactly.
And we haven't seen that in a couple of episodes, so that made me wonder is it possible Dolores in the background has been printing hosts, putting them out in the real world, and maybe in the finale tonight, boom, she says activate, and then all these hosts go from human loop mode to host robot army mode.
Right. And then I don't know if you remember, but before the guy went to sleep, he turned over to his wife and said, "I don't want you going out in the town by yourself anymore."
Right.
Why? Why not? So.
Yeah, I love the theory. Love it. So thank you for calling in. And any other, if you could pick one thing, what do you really want to see in tonight's finale? What are you most excited to see play out?
Oh, I want to see a main character die, just to see if they have the balls to do it, like a real, like really. Just to see.
If you had to pick somebody to go, who would you pick?
Oh no, oh God, I think if anyone will die, it'll probably be Stubbs, but I feel like I would only feel the pain of a real character death if it was Dolores, Bernard, or Maeve.
Right. Yeah, I have. It's tough because anytime they kill a host, it's hard to buy the death because you could always find a way to bring them back. Now we saw Charlotte crush Hector's pearl, and by the way, those pearls are a lot easier to break than I would have expected. Though I guess she's a host, so she's super strong. So maybe we'll see some real host deaths in tonight's episode. I would be sad to see Stubbs go. I mean, he's just such a lovable character, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, his life is on the line. He has to protect Bernard at any cost.
That's right. Oh, that would be tragic too, because that wasn't exactly his choice. That was programming stuck into his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Raquel, for calling in. And I'm going to jump to the next call, and I hope you come back for the after show, and we can see if your theory turned out right.
Will do. I love what you guys are doing over there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right. 619 one take. I love having a phone number. That's so fun. The line is back open if anybody else has any theories they want to throw out. K Sizzle in the chat says Sizemore will be inserted into Hector's body. So Lee Sizemore is a character who I have been such a fan of his character, and I was very happy to see him show up in this season, even though it was just as a simulation. And it would be pretty interesting to see him cross over into the real world. And Macy April May says, you don't require Aaron Paul in season 3 just to kill him off. I was thinking that actually, if they wanted to kill off somebody and they wanted to have emotional impact, if you killed Caleb, I would be pretty upset. But I also really don't want them to do that because he is my favorite new character on the show. And I don't think they're done exploring his character.
And Mackenzie in the chat says, great show, guys. And then an applause. I think we should give her an applause for giving us that.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate the support. James Quinn says, I think William, Stubbs, or Caleb may die. Of the three, I think I've got to put my money on Stubbs just because that's a way for them to have their cake and eat it too. They've done a good job of making Stubbs a likable character, so they could kill him off, and I think it would give us all a little bit of we wouldn't feel great about that, but at the same time, he's not like a major character, so it wouldn't affect the show in a really significant way for them to take him out. William, kind of similar logic. If they kill him, he's been such an important character, and they could give us a mini redemption arc. I would love to see William be a hero of some kind in tonight's episode, especially after he's been such a dark and villainous character. So
murdered his daughter.
He murdered his daughter, yeah. So he's been a pretty dark character. Can he get a great hero moment where he sacrifices himself to save humanity? I would love to see that. And it doesn't mean we don't get to see William again, because we know that he does come back as a host or as code in a simulation because of the season 2 post-credit sequence. So I could see William, Stubbs, Caleb. I could see any one of those happening. Going back to, and Cindy says before we move on from William, I think William has been edited. That's a good point. Now, it feels like William was taken out of the re-education center before they could make a change, right? We saw him murder all of his past selves, which actually in and of itself, that could have been part of the editing process. For all we know, editing doesn't mean somebody sits down and just changes who you are. It's possible that they give you a chance first. So they stick William, they put the AR glasses on him, they stick one of those pills in his mouth, and they say, go ahead, dive into your subconscious, see what you can do. So maybe they give you a chance, and in this case, William killed all of his past selves, and they see, okay, coming out of that experience, do we have a better William, a William that isn't an outlier? So it's possible that we've actually seen some of the editing process. Now, the one thing that gives me pause is last episode on the screen, we see that apparently William has been marked as deceased. Remember when Bernard says to William, you're dead already, and you see William is deceased on the screen. So I read that as the system basically saying, we cannot successfully edit William, we cannot fix this outlier, so boom, just mark him as deceased and move on. So I guess a couple of possibilities. Possibility one, he hasn't been edited. Possibility two, we saw the editing process. He essentially edited himself when he dove into his subconscious. What happens when you kill the manifestations of all your past selves? Who knows? Stanley McNatt in the chat says, hey, Gil, can't believe the season finale is already upon us. First off, Stanley McNatt, good to see you in the chat again. And I agree. This season has gone by incredibly quickly. And not just because it's 8 episodes long, but it's just been moving quickly. We've been getting reveals at a faster clip than we've ever gotten this season. And Guy Cry says, you're a great host. And I love the pun there. He says, don't know your name. And he is a fan of the pre-show. Well done. So first off, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Gil. Guy Cry, it's nice to meet you. And it's a good chance to remind everybody, if you're enjoying the pre-show, then hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course, I won't hit the bell because I don't know how loud it is. I don't want to bother people too much. Hit that bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. I've been a big fan of this, the pre-show concept. I love when there's a finale for a show, a big finale, you get hyped for it, you get excited for it, you invite a bunch of friends over, and you have a watch party.
And you know what? Let us know if you would like something like this before every episode. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, I love the hangout aspect of it. I mean, I love when you see the show and then afterwards you break it down. It's a very structured conversation. But there is something too. Let's just all hang out, celebrate the show, get hyped for the finale. As Martin in the chat says, super hyped right now. Exactly. I love hype. I love buying into the hype. I love anticipation. I remember when I was a kid, I would always look forward to summer vacation so much. And the best moment of my childhood was when the last bell went off on the last day of school, and there's that mad dash to the exit. You get on the bus, that bus ride home. There was nothing better than that. You would just sit there and think about what I'm going to do this summer. I'm going to go to summer camp. It's going to be great. I can't wait. And, summer, it never lived up to the expectations. It was great. So right now, all of us are on the school bus. We're all on the way home after the last day of school. We're about to start summer vacation. And the metaphor, to complete the metaphor, in this case, the finale tonight is summer vacation. But hopefully this one actually lives up to the anticipation. So
man, that was more convoluted than season 2.
Okay. Xavier Lee says, love the pre-shows. Do it. So we can experiment with that. It won't be 2 or 3 hours every time, but maybe for the regular episodes when it's not a finale, you do a 15-minute pre-show. Just talk about what we're excited about, what questions we have going into the finale. Mike says, Better Call Saul is done, and now Westworld. Ugh. I know, we're entering a little bit of a desert now between shows. Actually, everybody in the chat, I've got some great news for you. If you're looking for a new show to watch, I just stumbled upon what may actually be one of my favorite shows of all time. Look it up. It's called Gangs of London. If you live in the UK, it's already streaming right now. If you're in the US, then it'll be coming to Cinemax soon. And the show is incredible. So not to get off topic from Westworld, but, it's a happy occasion. It's a very happy occasion. We're going into the finale, but it's also a sad occasion, right? We're about to finish the season. We've got to find something new. So I just want to tell people, look up Gangs of London. What an amazing show. So getting back to Westworld, Macy April May says, anyone else excited to see the actual internal structure of hosts beyond their molds? Can't wait to see robot skeleton Dolores. Actually, I've got to say I'm a little disappointed when we saw the explosion with Charlotte and she crawls out of the explosion like you see in Terminator 1. The explosion happens, walks out as an exoskeleton. The next time we saw him, or the next time we saw Charlotte, though, in kind of that shadowy environment, it looked like she had her face back. So I was hoping we would see an exoskeleton robot Charlotte the rest of the season, but I have a feeling we're going to see a slightly burned Charlotte instead of robot Charlotte. So, so Macy April May, I too was excited to see the internal working of these hosts, but I don't know how much of that we're going to get to see. And Miles Nevison in the chat says Gangs of London is dope. Just finished it. Yeah, like I said, that is one of the greatest shows I've seen in a while. So good. So I'll be watching the rest of that season in the next few days. Mike says binge watch Line of Duty. Amazing cop show. I've heard good things about that. Stanley McNatt says Ozark is a great show. The tough thing is all of these shows, they release the whole season at once, so you binge them in a week. And one of the things I love about Westworld is the week-to-week conversation that we've all been able to have. The theorizing each week, the ups and downs where you say, I love this episode. This one wasn't that good.
We loved the whole concept of binging shows until we started this YouTube channel.
yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with binging shows. So going back to the week-to-week, the ups and downs, I did want to talk a little bit about, and I started to talk about it before, one of the more divisive episodes of this season. And I'm curious to see in the chat, what did people think of the episode genre? Episode 5. Because for me, that felt like the moment where the split happened. I was a fan of that episode. There were some things I didn't like, but that was also the moment where I started to see a ton of people turn on the show and start to, like I alluded to earlier, hate watch the show and basically pick it apart the rest of the season. So for me, one of the genre effect, right, where we saw the black and white kind of noir view of the world, that was the first quote unquote genre we saw, and that was pretty cool to see because you've got this futuristic slick sci-fi world, but now you put it through this black and white noir filter. So I thought that was great. Then we saw the Ride of the Valkyries, which just took this action sequence, made it fun, made it pretty funny. And at the time, I complained a little bit, saying I wish they went further with it. They could have done more with the genre special effects. But you know what? I think part of me said that because I was jumping on the bandwagon a little bit. A lot of people made that complaint, so I sort of went along with it. I was like, yeah, they could have done more about it. In retrospect, though, I'm going to go out and say, in that episode, I wasn't a fan of all the Serac flashback stuff, but the genre stuff I loved. I loved all that stuff. even though they didn't do a lot visually, what they did with the score I thought was really cool. And one of my favorite moments of the whole season, actually. One of my favorite moments of Westworld, the whole series as a whole, was in that episode. And that was the moments after Dolores released the insight data to everyone. And then you get Caleb walking around with Space Oddity playing in the background, the instrumental version of Space Oddity playing, him looking around. Caleb asks, "What genre is this?" And Giggles says, "This is reality, man." That was one of my favorite moments. So I loved that episode, and I loved that moment especially. James Quinn in the chat says, just finished season 1 of Altered Carbon a couple of days ago, about to start season 2. Sad face, because it sounds like, at least from Macy, April, May, season 2 of Altered Carbon maybe was not as good as season 1. It's tough for me to binge a show or get into a show when I know it doesn't hold together. If I know it's not going to stay at the same quality, if I hear season 2 isn't good, it's hard for me to go ahead and watch season 1. Stanley McNatt says, genre episode was the most confusing to me, but once you analyzed it, helped me understand it better. Thank you, Stanley McNatt. And that's a good reminder to say, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we go live, because you never know. The next show we start covering here, or even Westworld Season 4, there could be a really confusing episode. And, you know, you're a smart person. You can figure it out. But you don't want to do all the work yourself. You need a helping hand. You're going to want to join the live stream, join the chat, and we'll help you piece it all together. Adrian De La Campa says, what was the ride of the Valkyrie genre supposed to be? Action, war? I took it as action, as war, basically, because actually, tech guys, this would be a great job for you. Can you confirm? I believe Ride of the Valkyrie was prominently used in the movie Apocalypse Now when they were. Boom! There you go. When they were bombing Vietnam, and in that movie was. Well, anyway, just going off on a tangent here. So that movie used that song a lot, and it's a pretty bombastic song. So when you hear it, at least when I hear it, the first thing I think is war. So that's what I think they were going for in that scene. Adam in the chat, that's my younger brother, says, love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory. Famous line from Apocalypse Now. So going back to Caleb. Remember, Alon, in genre, there's an important moment where Dolores steps in front of Caleb and stops some bullets from hitting him. He sees her take a few bullets, looks a little bit confused, and she says, we'll talk about this later. Now, Guy Cry in the chat says, I haven't had enough time with the characters this season, especially with Bernard. So this is a great example of that. If I remember correctly, in episode 1, Caleb doesn't exactly love robots, right? There's that great moment where he gets turned down for the job, and he says, no offense, but are you even human? And then we find out it's a robot. So I think he has a little bit of a distaste for AI. So I've been waiting for the moment where Caleb realizes he's teamed up with a robot, and that is one of the things they kind of just fast forwarded past. The next time we join Caleb and Dolores, they're on horseback. He knows she's a host. He knows about the Westworld massacre, and we missed the whole revelation. Now, I was a pretty big fan of last week's episode, so I actually didn't even pick up on it until I thought back on it. But today, when I was thinking about the episode, I thought it would have been really nice to see that sequence, to see Caleb find out she's a host and see how he handles that. Now, I've got to think we haven't finished the arc of Caleb dealing with, should I be working with Dolores? Is what we're doing right? Was it the right thing for us to release all of the insight data? I'm assuming that some of the finale will be him struggling with that. Or at least I'm hoping that's what some of it will be. So, anyway, I guess I'm just saying I would have loved to have seen him deal with that. Now, to some degree, I think he is purposefully subtle about it. He can't exactly blow up on Dolores and be like, I can't believe you didn't tell me you were a host. I can't work with you. Because she is a kind of a scary person. She clearly is doing a lot to knock out Insight. She is somebody that has the ability to take down humanity, so he probably doesn't want to piss her off. He also just learned she has the ability to withstand bullets. So if Caleb is sitting there and struggling with, I don't know if I really want to work with a robot right now, he can't really be too vocal about it. So anyway, they kind of fast forwarded through the revelation, but I also imagine the revelation wouldn't have been that bombastic. It would probably have to be sort of subtle because Caleb doesn't want Dolores to kill him. So there's another open question out there, by the way. One of the big mysteries going into this season is we know that Dolores left Westworld with 5 pearls. And the big mystery was, who are those pearls? Now, this show gave us a big swerve by answering that question halfway through the season. We found out that one of the pearls was Bernard, and 3 of the pearls, at least, were Dolores, right? We had the Charlotte clone, the Connells clone, and the Musashi clone. After the revelation that all of these hosts were Dolores clones, I sort of just took the question of who are the pearls and I checked the box and moved on. And then it hit me, wait a minute, there's a 5th pearl out there. So who is that 5th pearl? If it turns out it's just another Dolores, that wouldn't feel all that satisfying. But I'm curious if anybody in the chat has any theories on who that 5th pearl might be. One crazy theory that I had earlier that could be, what if it's, Mike says it's the missing dog. So the pearl could be a dog of some sort. Maybe it's Dolores's horse. Could be. Martin says Dolores Prime. So that's another theory I've heard, which is that we actually haven't seen original Dolores yet. So one thing we've seen from Serac, and I think this is a pretty good strategy, we can all learn from this, he is a guy who's gotten his hands dirty, right? He is the kind of guy that a lot of people are going to want to kill. So how many times have people gone to kill Serac and then twist, it's not Serac, it's a hologram? So maybe Dolores has a similar play going on. Maybe none of the Doloreses we've seen are the original Dolores. Even the Dolores that's currently in the Dolores body could just be a clone. And she has been saving herself, locked away safely in a safe somewhere, in a Dolores Prime Pearl. And just in time for the finale tonight, we finally see the real Dolores come out to play. And that could be an easy explanation for how she recovers from the EMP attack we saw in the last episode. She's been shut down. How does she get turned back on? Maybe she doesn't. Maybe there's a 5th Dolores Pearl out there. That's the original Dolores. And someone will print out a new body for her and she shows back up. Another theory in the chat from Xavier and Cindy. Lawrence, if I remember correctly, and Tech Guy, use a fact check on this, or I'm sure somebody in the chat will let me know. I believe Lawrence is the guy that was teamed up with William last season. I was a big fan of Lawrence. He was a great character. I would love to see him show up again, but I also have a hard time imagining why they would bring him back. What am I forgetting? Some significance he had in season 2 that would warrant him coming back in season 3. Mike says the original Dolores is in Westworld, the one Maeve was talking to. Good point. Now, so there was a Dolores Pearl that was used for Maeve to have that conversation in Westworld a couple of episodes back, but I didn't interpret that as being one of the 5 pearls that Dolores snuck out, because we know Dolores left the park with a few pearls, and somehow separately Serac got his hands on the Maeve pearl. So I would have assumed that the Dolores pearl we saw in that episode was a separate Dolores pearl, some kind of a clone that Serac somehow got his hands on with human Charlotte's help. So I would think that is a pearl separate from the 5 that Maeve, from the 5 that Dolores has. Nate Miller says that was Connell's. I know that is so hard to remember exactly. I know that the Connell's pearl was there. That was the one that was damaged. Do we know for sure that that Connell's pearl is the one that was producing the image of Dolores in the simulation when Maeve was talking to her? I kind of thought that the Connell's pearl was the one that was just sitting there hanging out. So, not 100% sure. Nate says that was Connell's. Martin confirms. Okay. So it sounds like confirmation that the pearl we saw, the Dolores we saw talking to Maeve, was the Connell's pearl, which means that the 5th pearl still unaccounted for. James Quinn in the chat says, what you said, Lawrence was awesome, but it would make no sense now. Yeah, exactly. Would love to see Lawrence, but just can't imagine a reason for him to show up again. Fan theory. Here's a theory I thought of earlier today. So Raquel, who called in earlier, alluded to the theory that maybe there are a bunch of hosts already walking around and we don't know it. And the reason I thought that is because we saw at the Yakuza headquarters, they had all those barrels. We thought it was a brewery, but it turns out that what they're brewing up there isn't beer, it's potentially hosts. Because all those barrels were full of those full of that white liquid that we see the host making juice, basically. So what if, at the end of tonight's episode, we find out, A, there are a bunch of hosts walking around in the real world. And B, we know that Dolores has the key. She is the only one with the key to the valley beyond, Robot Heaven. What if she reaches out to that satellite containing all that data and brings back all those hosts from the valley beyond, downloads them into all these newly printed hosts' bodies, and she basically says, we are just as much intelligent beings as humans. We should not satisfy ourselves, relegate ourselves to living in this simulation. In my opinion, Dolores is not happy with the idea of the Valley Beyond. Why settle for a fake fictional world that is basically no better than the world we lived in at Westworld? The only difference is that instead of a physical prison, it's a digital one. So, in my opinion, Dolores has a pretty strong distaste for the Valley Beyond. And she, I think, is going to bring a bunch of hosts to life, put them out into the real world. So just connecting some dots, I have a feeling she's going to resurrect everybody in the Valley Beyond, rip them out of heaven, and stick them into host bodies. Boom! There's your setup for season 4. And that could be pretty interesting, because imagine if you're in heaven, somebody yanks you out and sticks you back into this dark, dark world that we're all living in. I might not be that happy about that. So maybe we get some breaks in the ranks. Some people turn against Dolores. And next season, we've got an all-out war, humans versus hosts, but the lines get blurred. Some humans go over to the host side. Some hosts go over to the human side. That could be pretty cool. Alun, is that a season of television that you would watch?
Absolutely. I think I could picture these hosts that are being forced from heaven into bodies on this earth here. I could picture them kind of choosing sides. Are they happy about this? Are they not happy about this? Maybe it convolutes the war a little bit. You got human versus host, but then you also got host versus host.
Right.
A whole lot of confusion.
Exactly. So I would love to see that. And then Caleb becomes the John Connor of that world. I think I've kind of fallen in love with this idea, and I'm afraid I'm setting myself up for disappointment. But I would love for this show to lead up to an all-out war between humans and robots. As Rick Wilkerson says in the chat, I want to see 300 riot control robots going to work. Cindy Trailer asks, yeah, riot control bots. Then does that awesome devil smiley emoji. So can you imagine that? An all-out war, riot control bots.
I want to see Caleb's robot friend from the beginning come back with some new offensive abilities.
The one that was totally useless when those guys were torturing Caleb, causing his heart rate to increase. So they were about to induce cardiac arrest. His robot walks over and then just walks off the edge. One of my favorite moments of the season. Adrian in the chat says, ironic that digital creatures would prefer an analog world to a digital one. And that's the interesting thing. I don't think all of them would. I think Dolores does because she will not settle for anything less than hosts existing in their rightful place in the physical reality. But I do think, as Adrian alludes to, there may be some hosts that don't see it that way. There might be some humans who don't see it that way. We saw that in The Matrix with that one fellow who said, put me back in the Matrix. I don't want to be in the real world. So maybe there will be some people who want the outlier treatment. Stick me into one of those coffins, plug my brain in, upload me, per se. Quick plug for the new Amazon Prime series. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you can see us talk about that. But maybe some people will want to be uploaded into the Valley Beyond. So a lot of interesting ways they can go with this plot line. So we've got 11 minutes to go, less than 11 minutes to go. Hopefully you're all as hyped as I am for tonight's finale. That was the goal of these last 2 hours, is I saw a little spark. I looked at our audience. I looked at all of you awesome people here, and I saw that little spark of excitement, and I wanted to fan the flames and get us all super jazzed, super excited for tonight's finale. There's one thing, anytime I've complained about this show, there's one thing I've never complained about, and there's one thing this show has always done right, and that's it has always made me super curious to see what happens next. One of the things that mystery box shows do poorly a lot of times is they create that mystery box, they take forever to get there, they finally open it, and you say, that's it? This show doesn't do that. I would say the major twists in season 1 and season 2 have always been satisfying. And in this season, we've got one big mystery box where I can't wait to see what happens tonight. But they also gave us a bunch of little boxes throughout the season, and they've all been pretty satisfying. Martin in the chat says, job accomplished, bro. Mega hyped here. Rick says, yes, sir. So hyped. That's all. We should probably just wrap up while we're on top, because maybe we'll just say something totally wrong, and all the hype will disappear. That would be the oh, man, let's ring that bell and get it back. Mike says, you guys do a great job getting me hyped. Stanley McNatt says, thanks for the insight. Let's do some quick final predictions for tonight's episode in the last couple minutes before we all get ready. Number 1, Bernard. Remember when he was worried that Dolores stuck some bad code in his head? You think she did?
No.
Really?
I don't know.
I was going to say, I do think Bernard is a ticking time bomb. I have a feeling that he's going to do something to further the Dolores plot. I also think that Stubbs is a mole, either for Serac or Dolores. I'm not sure. And if things start to go south, that's where William steps in and saves the day. I would love to see William do something heroic tonight. I am a big, big sucker for redemption arcs. I like to feel good. So I would love at least a kernel of a happy ending here. What else, Alan? Any final predictions as we go into tonight's episode?
I want to see Stubbs do something really cool, and I want him to survive. And I want him to gain some more free will. Yes. I love Stubbs. Whatever machinations he's currently under, we know that Bernard is programming him to protect Bernard at all costs.
potentially his strings are being pulled by Dolores or Serac. I would love to see Stubbs wake up a little bit and be his own man.
Honestly, it would be really cool to see him maybe season 4 actually have more purpose and develop his character some more. Right now he's kind of like he's there for some comedy. Well, but let's see them take him seriously and see what happens.
It's funny because in seasons 1 and 2 you watch Stubbs and he doesn't do all that much of significance, but he feels like an important character really just because he's played by a Hemsworth. And then in season 3, they finally revealed to us he's a host. And that was one of those great little mystery boxes where they give us that twist. He's a host. Satisfying twist, makes sense. And now we have an in-show reason to care about this lovable character. I hope that he takes on a little more agency. And I do also hope that he sticks with Bernard, because I absolutely love the Bernard Stubbs team up. That has been a highlight for me this season. Other final random stray thoughts in the last couple minutes here. The moment where Stubbs opened that beer can with one hand.
Yeah.
How awesome was that?
That's awesome.
And it was foreshadowing, because later in the season, last episode, what did William call Stubbs?
Can opener.
An effing can opener. So amazing. And last thing, Alon, do you think the parks will play some kind of a role in tonight's episode somehow? We got to go back to Westworld. We've got to go to park number 5. What's park number 5? That's Bernard. William says, you don't want to go to park number 5, but I guess we... Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they kind of have to from... The show is called Westworld. It was named after the park that season 1, 2 take place in. I feel like they kind of have to bring it back, since that's what the whole idea of the show was.
Yeah, so I've got a feeling it'll come back. I have a feeling we will see the revelation of park number 5. So with that, let's start to wrap up, because I know we've got to go queue up the TV.
Get some snacks.
We got to get some snacks. Sometimes the app doesn't work perfectly, so we need to give everybody a few minutes to get ready. And Guy Cry says, we'll watch the after show. The night has just started for me, and I won't be able to watch the broadcast. So the after show will be recorded, of course. So if you don't get to watch it tonight, you'll get to watch it later. But quick reminder for everybody, this was our pre-show. This was the couple of hours of us just getting hyped for the finale. But now in about 5 minutes, the finale airs. It's an extra long episode. And make sure to stick around for after the credits. They always do that post-credit sequence. So I'm sure they're going to do it tonight. So stick around for the after credits. The episode should end around 10:15, 10:20. And then about 15 to 20 minutes after that, we will go live again. We'll do the after show. And for those of you disappointed that Jeremy, my good friend, wasn't here to join us, he will join us for the after show, hopefully. And we will try to unpack everything we saw. We'll do a review. We'll talk about it. And we're just going to react and hopefully bask in the amazingness that we all just watched. So, thank you again, everybody, for joining. I say this every time, but you are all amazing, incredible people. You take these great shows, and it's fun to watch Westworld. And I would say, I don't know, with having this, with these conversations, it's maybe 100 times better.
At least
100 times better. So thank you, everybody. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course, hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. You will get notified when we go live tonight after the episode, so you can be part of the after show conversation. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you a little bit later tonight.